Today I want to talk a little bit about Legacy in MTG, mainly because tomorrow we're actually going to have a Legacy event. We're going to have the SCG Open Legacy, and it's going to be tomorrow and on Sunday. And that is something I am looking forward to because Legacy as a format, it bleeds players every year. It's incredible expensive to get into. The decks are getting us more expensive year after year, and you can't really justify getting into it unless you have like endless of cash, really. Because next to it you have Modern, which is nowhere near as expensive, plus Modern still gets coverage from Wizards. And just 18 hours ago, they announced a new set called Modern Horizon, which are gonna be cards that are directly gonna be reprints and new prints just for Modern. Here is the official text. Quote, releasing June the 14th, Modern Horizons contains 240 new to Modern cards, 254 total, with a mix of reprints not yet legal in Modern and new cards that celebrate both Modern and Magic's rich history. Modern Horizon will release on Magic Online June the 13th. So yeah, Modern is getting all the attention from Wizard, obviously, and it's much easier to get people into Modern than it would be to get them into Legacy. Are you gonna tell your friend, I played this card game, you can get into it too, but you have to pay, I don't know, you have to pay like €1,000 at the very least to get something that kind of works. But it's okay, it's fun. It's very hard to get new players into Legacy. Let me put it that way. Now, before I get started with today's video, which is obviously as the title describes, it's going to be an introduction to two of the decks I'm expecting to see tomorrow because they are staples. They've been in Legacy for years. I've played both at some time. I played Blades when it was in Standard, and I played Storm when it was in Legacy. It still is in Legacy, but I haven't played Legacy for years. However, before we get started with the Legacy part of this video, I just want to talk really quickly about Mono Blue. I'm still going to release the video, but it's going to be next week. But if you're not interested in the Mono Blue and just want to hear the Legacy part, then skip forward to whatever time code is currently on the screen. So let's talk about the Mono Blue really quickly. So the reason why I choose to delay the video is because I do want more information. I want to see the deck more in action before I give it my final thoughts. Because we have seen Mono Blue now in 2 weeks in a row doing incredibly well. So this week is gonna be pretty much people are gonna focus on either playing Mono Blue or countering Mono Blue. Now my personal theory, what will happen is that we're gonna see a lot of red deck wins. We might see some very early black-red decks. There is a little chance that we might see some very funky blue-white creature control deck with Spell Pierce, and I am expecting a lot more decks that just includes a lot of discard. I am actually expecting to see Duress in mainboards this weekend in Standard. I just want to have that said on record as we get into the format starting on Sunday. Anyway, that's why I chose to delay the video until after this weekend's tournament, because I want to make sure that whatever I release next week is gonna be as accurate as I can possibly get it. But that will do it for the Mono Blue part of this video. So let's now go and move right into the first deck that we're gonna see in Legacy. Welcome to the Legacy part of this video in case you did skip forward. So, the first deck that we're gonna talk about is the Storm deck. This was the first time I actually saw Legacy. It was Storm against Merfolk, and it's also the first deck I played in Legacy, mainly because I did actually see it on a Worlds final. So what is the Storm deck all about? Now before I talk about the Storm deck, I need to talk about one card that, in case you're completely new to Legacy, that you should be aware of because it is pretty much the defining card of Legacy. If this card did not exist, Legacy would probably not function as a format. Of course, to anyone who is familiar with Legacy, it's gonna be obvious what card I'm talking about, and it is of course Force of Will, the best counterspell ever printed. If you just glance at the mana, you're gonna go, how does this fit in Legacy? But then you read the text and you realize why this card is the card for Legacy. You may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost, counter target spell, end quote. Which of course means that you can stop your opponent from casting a game-winning spell on turn 1, and assuming they went first, even without having anything on the field, without having access to any mana, and this is why pretty much Legacy functions. Anyway, let's move back to Storm and let's talk about the deck. So how does it function? How does it win? Well, it wins with this little card called Tendrils of Agony. Target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, and it has the keyword Storm, which obviously the deck is named after. So let's have a look at the Storm keyword. What does it actually do? Well, when you play this spell, copy it for each spell played before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies, which is pretty much never relevant. But this is why the deck functions. Assuming you have played enough spells to actually kill the other guy, as soon as you resolve Tendrils of Agony, the game ends. Now, usually, the game kinda ends once you can actually start resolving your thing and resolving your other key card, which is Ad Nauseam. As soon as you can resolve this card, the game is over one way or another. Now, Ad Nauseam is really interesting, really. Let's read it really quickly. Reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. You may repeat this process any number of times. So this is how you are gonna fill up your hand with enough spells to actually kill your opponent. Now, as you would imagine, there has been time where Ad Nauseam kills its controller or its caster. There have been times where you but when you use Ad Nauseam and then you just don't get enough to actually kill the other player and you die. But as a general rule, as soon as Ad Nauseam resolves, the other player can pretty much go AFK, because it's all up to you if you're gonna math it correctly or if you're gonna flip the right cards. So how do you get this all to work? How do you not kill yourself? Well, for one thing, the deck is filled with draw spells. We have Ponder, we have Preordain, we have Brainstorm, all the classic draw power cards, and of course, everything is really cheap. Apart from Tendrils and Ad Nauseam, nothing really here will kill you really that fast. Now, there has been instances when people run 2 Ad Nauseam and also killing themselves by, drawing the second Ad Nauseam. Now, how do you get enough mana to cast all these amazing cards? Well, you run Cabal Ritual. Cost 2 gives you 3 mana. However, it has Threshold, which means it gives you 5 mana if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyards. So, the picture of how this deck plays becomes clearer the more cards you get to look at. We have cards like Dark Ritual, cost 1 black, gives you 3 black, again, and fills up your graveyard. Getting to the threshold is very important for a Storm deck, because without the threshold, it can be really difficult to get the deck to even work. You can really screw yourself up if you don't actually get the threshold for the ritual. You can sit there with just needing 1 more card or 1 more mana. Anyway, let's move on to some more mana cards in the deck, and that's gonna be the Lionized Diamond, one of the most amazing card that has ever been printed. Discard your hand, sacrifice Lionized Diamond, add 3 mana of any one color, activate this ability only anytime you could cast an instance. Obviously, the card is amazing. You can flip it with Ad Nauseam without paying life, and it does some other things for you as well, which I will go into in a little bit. The next mana card, or the final mana card in the the standard configuration of the Storm deck, is gonna be the Lotus Petal, another 0 cost artifact card that gives you mana. Gives you single mana, however, it increases your graveyard for the threshold, and it gives you a 1 more spell that you play that turn. Remember that, as a rule, you probably need 9 to 10 spells to play in a single turn to actually kill the other guy. So how do you make sure that the coast is actually clear and the other guy can't just, stop any of your number of things that you want to do? Well, the deck runs 4 duress. As standard players, we should know what this does by now, but it also runs the card that I keep calling Thought Erasure all the time, and that is the classic Thoughtseize. Target player reveals the hand, you choose a non-land card from it, that player discard that card, you lose 2 life. Again, another amazing card, and of course the way you want to play this deck ideally is duress, is the coast clear, can I reach my threshold and start doing all my amazing things. Now, you might wonder, how do you get your Adnasium? How do you get your one-offs? If you don't flip them with Adnasium, how do you get your Tendrils? Well, we have this beauty, the Inferno Tutor. This is one of the best tutors in the game. Yes, there are other that are even better, but they are banned in Legacy, and for good reason. Inferno Tutor. Reveal a card from your hand. Search your library for a card with the same name as that card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Hellbent. If you have no cards in hand, instead search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And this is, without Inferno Tutor, the deck would probably not work. I mean, it would be very hard. You would have to get incredible lucky with all your draw spells, and even then it would probably never work. Now, how do you use Inferno Tutor proper? Remember that we have Lionized Diamond. It allows you to discard your hand, and by doing so, you can search with your tutor to find the right card. Again, without the Inferno Tutor, we would never have a Storm deck really, or not this version of Storm at least. It just couldn't function. Anyway, let's get into the second deck that we are very likely to see, which at one point was actually a standard deck, obviously not with the land and not with all the fancy legacy spells, and that is my favorite deck of all time, Coldblade. It's, it did get banned. Yes, it was a bit too good, but it was fun to play. I mean, it wasn't as unfun as Mono Blue. I don't think so. It was better than Nexus of Fate, so I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, let's get into the rest of the video. Otherwise, we might be here for 2 hours while I gush over all the good times I had with Coldblade. Or Cowblade, however you want to say it. So, as I said in my Mythic review when I went over all the new Mythic cards, you have a very special keyword that makes decks like these function. Now in that case it was Birthing Pod I was comparing the new Mystic thingy to, but in the Coldblade deck it is the Stonefort Mystic we need to talk about. What does it do? For one thing, once it enters the battlefield, now this is important, if you manage to counter the Stonefort Mystic, the enter the battlefield trigger will not occur. So he will not get to search for an artifact, not an artifact, for an equipment card. Now obviously what you want is to make sure that you can resolve your Stonefort Mystic. Once you get your Mystic on the board, the game should be quite straightforward. Because with the Stonefort Mystic, you are gonna search up Uzamava's Jitte or whatever. I mean, people say the name 100 different ways. I'm gonna go with just Jitte, the old school way to say it. You're either gonna search up the Jitte or you're gonna search up, where are you? They are, Mr. Batterskull. So let's talk a little bit about Batterskull. Now, this is just, I mean, apart from being amazing and fun, it's just, I really love the art as well. It's so cute. Anyway, this is one of the best equipment. Obviously, this particular list runs Batterskull and Jitte. Sometimes you do still see the other blades, Feast and Famine, War and Peace. You don't see War and Peace in Legacy, but I have seen lists with Feast and Famine, at least in the sideboard. But yeah, Batterskull and Uzama's Jitte, two of the best equipment for the Coldblade. Now, how does Stonefort Mystic helps you apart from getting your Batterskull and your Jitte into your hand? Well, let's go back to the Mystic and read the second part, which is really what kinda got it banned. It's also banned from Modern because of this reason. Pay 1 colorless mana and 1 white mana, and you get this amazing effect. You may put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. Remember what I said way back in that Mythic video? Put is not cast. You cannot counter put. Unless the card says counter put. But counter spells does not work against Stonefort Mystic. Once it is on the field, it can bring down your Batterskull, your Jitte, and there's nothing the other player can do. And then you can equip it onto your Mystic or onto your Hawk, which is obviously another classic and was also in the standard version of this deck. Now, why was the Hawk so good? Well, once the Hawk enters the battlefield, you can go and get your other Hawks as well. So you thin your deck, you get more creatures in your hand, and overall, like, what is not to love about this card? It is basically a better version of the new green card that we have, which fetches a copy of itself whenever it adapts. But that is basically the basic you need to understand when you're watching the core blade, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, blade, white blue blade, UV blade, also had a Esper blade for, well, at some point that was a thing as well. There were a few other names that were not YouTube friendly that people called it as well. Now the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. You have Force of Will, you have a few draw spells, you have Brainstorm, which is another, well, it's an amazing draw spell. And of course, you have your Swords to Plowshare, one of the best removals ever printed as well. You get to exile target creature and its control against life equal to its power. I really wish they reprinted this, honestly. It would solve so many problems. Obviously, considering how well Drakes are selling and Phoenixes are selling, there's no way they're gonna reprint Sword of Plowshare in Standard. Not until the Phoenix leaves Standards, maybe. Maybe then we get it back, but no, I doubt we get it back again. Anyway, the final card, of course, we need to talk about when it comes to Core Blade is, of course, Jace the Mind Sculptor. One of the best planeswalkers ever printed, although Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, does bring up a good argument, although he is a bit expensive for a legacy format, but you know, legacy, dying and all that. Anyway, Jace the Mind Sculptor was expensive, probably one of the most expensive card on release. I remember trading my Gideon Jura, which at the time was worth, I think it was $80, for a Jace the Mind Sculptor just a few weeks after the set released. I was so happy making that trade because obviously, like, everyone who followed Legacy knew that Jace the Mind Sculptor would, well, he would be playable in Legacy, he would be playable everywhere. The card is just that good. Obviously, at the time, Gideon Jura was very good in Standard, but he was never gonna be a Legacy card. So that's why I really enjoyed that particular trade. Anyway, that concludes today's video, and I hope you're all gonna enjoy watching the Legacy format. Now, obviously, we're gonna see other things like Delver are for sure gonna be there, but if you want me to talk about all the Legacy decks in a, you know, new player's perspective and just go with the basics, we would be here for hours, even if I didn't go with mini stories here and there, which I tend to do. But when it comes to Storm and Blade, you should have a pretty basic understanding and at least be able to follow the format. I know it can be very hard to follow Legacy as a new player. Like the first time I saw Legacy, I saw of course the Storm versus Merfolk game, and even then I had to go and look up every single card they were playing. And back then, the YouTube quality was way worse, so it was really hard to read on the screen cards as well. What was the resolution? I think it was 480, something like that. Old times. Anyway, that will do it for this video, and I catch you guys next time. This is Project signing out.